like to welcome Ponsi Trivisvavet. Did I take that correctly? It's like a challenge. It's as if I'm in an examination all over again. So it's, once again, I'd like to invite Ponsi Trivisvavet to lead the insightful talk. Was that correct, Ponsi?
Nope.
No, it wasn't. Oh, I tried. At least I tried.
No problem.
Can you tell me your name correctly, though?
Ponsi Trivisvavet.
Trivisvavet.
You're great.
I got it
Thank
now.
you.
So let's hear it for Ponsi Trivisvavet.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Ponsi, you don't want me to introduce you properly?
Oh,
No, you can go ahead and do that yourself if you want to. It's completely fine with me,
sure,
don't worry.
Sure, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, so let me give you a brief about Ponsi and what she has done. So she is the CEO and Director of Inari, the SEEDesign company using advanced gene editing to revolutionize agriculture with extensive experience in global agriculture, including leadership roles at Syngenta and McKinsey Company. Ponsi is committed to building a sustainable global food system. And of course, it's now time to give her a huge round of applause. Ponsi is right here with you, smiling at all you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I promise that I'm not going to get you bored. So there will be interaction a little bit. So what I would like to talk about it today is, so I have to press hard. Right, so the first point is around, it has been a successful story when it comes to agriculture, right? All of us here are together, and we would agree that the food security has been improving significantly over the past 100 or 200 years, right? But then the challenges come in as we know that we are actually using 38% of precious land on earth, right? And we are using 70% of fresh water, and that's reality of agriculture. And we are responsible for a quarter of greenhouse gas emission. So that's the challenge that we are facing. Then, when we look at it further, from the perspective of if you want to solve the problem of food system, we'd like to actually go back to the very beginning of the food chain, right? So when we look at that, we like to go back to the seeds, to the genetics. So when we look at the seeds and genetics, the challenge becomes even more prominent, right? So we found that it is challenging when it comes to the innovation in seeds, which is pretty stagnant, whereby we have seen that it has only 1% yield gain in terms of innovation over the past several decades. On top of those, it takes 10 to 15 years to develop just one seed. And it costs more than $5 billion a year in terms of the R&D that are invested by just private sector, not even public sector, right? So the challenge becomes as if you look at the return on investment by farmers over the past 10 years, they have been going down. So the question becomes as, what if? What if we can develop seeds in just 1/3 of the time, 1/10 of the cost, with 10x performance? And what if we could do that, all of this, in the most nature positive way? And that is the reason why we founded Inari. So we founded Inari in the concept of those, right? So we are a seed design company, and I will share with you a little bit more on what it means. But essentially what we want to do is, how do you increase the yield significantly by reducing the amount of land, amount of water, and amount of chemical fertilizer? So we do that by using the two critical technologies that started to come in over the past 10 years, one of which is the AI-powered predictive design to really understand the complexity of the genomes of the crops. And then after we know that, we use CRISPR gene editing to unlock the full potential of the natural genes. So we don't have to debate anymore whether we're going to solve the problem of food security, or farmer profitability, or sustainability. We believe that these three things can coexist. After this video introduction, I would like to come back and share with you more in terms of the definition of the market and the technologies and how it will go forward in terms of the advancement. With that, I'd like to actually share with you just a 1-minute video introduction of what Inari is doing. Sorry, could you play video for us, please? Sorry, it should be the video embedded in here, not this slide, but the video. Nope, the video, please. All right, cannot do it. Thank you. Nope, not this one. Should be video embedded in here. All right. You know what? We're just going to skip the video then. Could you go put it back up to presentation? Apologies, everyone. A lot of technical problems here. So, I'll set that aside. Now, what I would like to do is to share with you a little bit of definition before I get on to the detail of the market development. So, a lot of you have heard about the word genetically modified seeds or GMO. And a lot of you have heard about gene editing or CRISPR. Can I check that everyone has heard about these two words, genetically modified seeds, GMO, and CRISPR gene editing? Can I check? Right. Does everyone know the difference between those two? Is it helpful to actually set the stage a little bit? Okay. All right. So genetically modified seeds, it's about an insertion of foreign gene into the plant. So it's not about having the same species when you insert something into the plant. Majority of those foreign genes are bacteria, right? So that's the definition of GMO. So you insert the bacteria or foreign gene in, and usually when you put that into the plant started to push back a little bit, so you can deal with only limited number of genes there. So there are the products like that, the simpler product, like for example, the insect control, the weed management. So the difference with the gene editing, the definition of gene editing is about how do you enhance the natural genes, the same species of the crop that we are making the enhancement. For example, when we do the gene editing of soybeans, we touch only natural soybean genes, right? So that's the difference. So what happened is when you actually touch the natural genes within the crops themselves, it allows you to actually work on several genes at the same time because it's actually embedded into the plants themselves. And you have ability to not only inserting, you can actually take it out, you can actually tune it up, you can actually tune it down, so you can make a lot of adjustment within the natural genes themselves. So that's the definition. With that, therefore, it allows us to actually solve the real problems of the crops, whether that would be significantly yield increase, reduce amount of water, or reduce amount of chemical fertilizer, because all of these are complex and they cannot be done with one single gene. They have to be worked on several genes at the same time, and that's the beauty of gene editing, that once you touch the natural genes, you can work on several genes at the same time. So the market today in terms of seeds is roughly around $60 billion. It has been increasing by 3 times over the past 2 decades. And how we view it, we believe that this market will be more than double over the next 10 years. At Inari, we focus on 3 critical crops. When it comes to row crops, of course, soy, corn, wheat globally is 70% of the market. But reality is, it is actually 90% of sustainability challenges. Whether that reality is corn consumes largest amount of nitrogen fertilizer in the world. And by the way, NO2 causes 300 times more GHG than the CO2. Right? Soy causes the challenge with the deforestation the most, and wheat consumes a lot of fungicide, right? So how are we going to address these three critical row crops? That's essentially the focus on what we're doing. So now, if you could allow me a little bit, I want to talk about SEEDesign platform that we're doing at Inari. What are the four distinctive areas? And I'm going to get into the detail of each one later on. So the first one, we use AI-powered predictive design and multiplex gene editing in order to create our unmatched technology platform, which allow us to target the step change products. So think about it, 10 to 20% yield increase. In other words, 10 to 20x of what the industry has been able to do, which is only 1% increase a year. So think about it as the opportunity to fundamentally increase the profitability of farmers by 50%. Right? So that's essentially what we're focusing on. And also in the pipeline, we're focusing on how to think about reducing the amount of water and nitrogen fertilizer by another 40%. So we're a SEEDesign company at Inari. We are 7 years old company. Our motto is not to go directly to farmers. Being a growth company, we know where to focus. We know where the swim lane is. Our company is a technology company. We design parent seeds. We sell parent seeds to the seed companies who are actually well trusted by the farmers. Then we essentially collect royalty in terms of the licensing revenue. So that's pretty asset light and focus on margin in terms of our business model. We have roughly around 330 people with the headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts, and another scientific operations in Ghent, Belgium, and the largest operations that we do the actual edits, use the big greenhouses, and have the field operations next to our seed customers in Indiana, in the US. So that's essentially what we are doing. So if you could allow me a little bit, so what are you talking about when you talk about technologies, right? Allow me to get into the detail a little bit here. So previously, before the new technologies come in, developing the seeds is about crossing male and female, and then you take a look at the crops over the next 10 years and see whether the crops perform as what you wanted to see. But the advent of AI allow us to do the AI-powered predictive design, or in other words, go into the genome of the crops and identify what are the genes that we should make the changes. So here's the interesting part. Can everybody guess, in general, plants have how many genes in their genomes? So human, all of us, have roughly around 20,000 genes in the genome, okay? So can you guess, like wheat, how many genes are there in genome? Can anyone guess? The answer is it's much more complex than us, human. It's 6 times more complex. So I'll give you example, another one. Soybeans, 50,000 genes, 2.5 times more complex than us. So human, 20,000 genes, we have knowledge, almost all of them, majority of them, 20,000 genes. In the case of soybeans, anyone wants to guess how many genes do we have knowledge about out of 50,000 genes? Anyone wants to guess? Huh? 30%, someone said here. So we have, in the history of mankind, we have the knowledge of roughly around 200 genes. That's it. That's it, out of 50,000 genes. And out of those 200 genes, only 50,000 genes that we have knowledge about is related to yield. So the question is, how do you actually discover more genes? And that's where we focus on. And so far, we have been able, over the past just 1.5 years, with the algorithm, with the assay, and with the data that we collect, we have already discovered 13 times more than what the past has been able to know about. So you think about that as potential, right? So what happened when you actually know about the number of genes 13 times more than what has been described in the literature? You essentially bring up the knowledge significantly. So once we know about those knowledge of these natural genes, then we apply CRISPR. But it's not the CRISPR as we know it. CRISPR was discovered in terms of their application roughly around 11 years ago, right? CRISPR is the scissor whereby you cut the DNA and you let them merge back. So when you cut it, you make the changes and then you create new phenotypes there. So what we do at Inari, we can do it as well. But how we think about it as nature is much more complex and much more subtle. So we don't only cut it, but which is pretty much turn off the gene. So you think about it as you would turn on and off the light switch, which we can do it at Inari. But we think that the nature needs to actually have something mimic to the subtle part of the nature as well. So we can actually control the gene expression. Think about it as you dim the light switch. Whether you dim it up a little bit, you dim it up, down a little bit. So that's essentially what we do. And some genes, they love to be knocked out. Some genes, they love to be tuned down. Some genes, they love to be tuned up. What we do is we mix and match all of them at the same time, and that's unique about Inari. So we do the multiplex gene editing there. So you think about it now, okay, all right, you have unique knowledge about the genes, and then you make the changes. That's essentially when you truly unlock the full potential of the seeds. You don't have to do one gene edit at a time. So what you do is you actually offset the compensatory effect of the crops themselves, which over the past few years, then it allowed us to create pretty rich pipeline of the products here. So as I mentioned, we focus on soy, corn, wheat. You should look at this timeline as only 5 years at max. Okay, so we are having the first product in going into commercialization phase now in the case of first generation 1 high yield soybeans. And we don't think that yield is a trait. We believe that yield is an outcome from changing architecture of the crops. So what do we mean by that? We mean is, in the case of soybeans, for example, in generation 1, we try to increase the number of seeds per pod, number of pods per node, individual seed weight, and make the vegetative growth better. So all of this, we call them levers, right? So we change each lever and we multiplex them. So now you could think about generation 2. If you want to work more on roots, generation 3, you can work on more on leaf size, stem size, whatever it is, and you multiplex them, right? And all of these are natural in terms of the genes that we touch. And that's essentially what we meant by generation 2, 3, and 4. And we have been proven that already in several few locations that we got really, really breakthrough performance in terms of the yield increase without adding any water, fertilizer, or land there. Quick one, I mentioned about our go-to-market model. So think about it as we are at the very beginning of the value chain, which is about developing the novel seeds in short period of time in the form of parent seeds. We sell parent seeds to any type of seed companies, whether that would be large, traditional seed company, or traditional distributor that have their own house brand in the seeds by themselves. They turn the parent seeds into the commercial seeds under their own bags, under their own brands, to sell it to farmers. We then collect royalty, which then what it means here is we don't want to disrupt the value chain in the market there. We leverage the brands and the relationship with farmers that the industry already has there. We don't have our own brand purposely because we want to actually respect the swim lane of every players in the value chain there. And we're not done yet. Well, I'm talking about example of generation 1 and 2, but we're working on generation 3 now for each of the crop. We are currently having operations in the US, but we started to get into Australia and we'll enter Brazil and Europe later on, and the intention is to go globally. Even though I talk about wave 1 crops mentioned earlier, but the platform is highly applicable to any other crops. Eventually, the ultimate goal of Inari is to be able to design any problems for any crops, any geography. This page is my favorite one. I'm not gonna go through that, but it just gives you a flavor of the team that we have here. So I'm grateful. I'm gonna not go through all, but I would just give you example of some of the team members in my leadership team here. Catherine Fouye, who is our Chief Scientific Officer, she was the one who sequenced wheat genome for the first time. And I mentioned it to you, wheat is extremely complex, right? I'll give you another example of the board members that Mike Mack, who is our executive chair, was the CEO of Syngenta earlier. And we're grateful for Howard W. Buffett, who has been here for almost 7 years now, helping us to lead the ESG committee. And we're grateful as well with the Scientific Strategy Board to push us to the next level when it comes to gene editing and AI predictive design. That includes Jennifer Doudna, who discovered the CRISPR-Cas9 mechanism and the benefits there, who won the Nobel Prize back in 2020. In summary, so at Inari, we believe that the world needs evolution of agriculture, and we believe that we are in the middle of it. And with the 4 areas that we have progressed, whether that would be around proven step change yield product pipeline, whether that would be around our seed design platform technology that applicable across crop, across geography, whether that would be around our business model that is asset light, focus on our own swim lane, and whether that would be around the starting part of our commercialization, which is quite clear and predictable in terms of the profitability. So hopefully you get a rough sense on why we are excited about the future of agriculture, the future of seeds, and how Inari could become one day that is creating the most impactful seed technology for our food system. With that, I would like to end my presentation here. Thank you very much for your attention.